Hello, and welcome to the room selection information session. My name is Jay Cusick. I'm the Assistant Director of Housing Assignments and Occupancy, and my colleague Caitlin Verdi, the Housing Assignment Specialist, will be presenting this information to you today. Caitlin?
Thanks so much, Jay. All right, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of the room selection process, I wanted to take a moment to just review this slide with some key points that we'd like you to think over before really getting into that room selection process and deciding where you want to end up next year. Some things that I would like to advise is really take this opportunity to think about what is most important to you when you envision your housing for next year. For example, maybe you want your best friend to be your roommate for next year, and that's totally fine. But remember that sometimes best friends do not always make the best roommates. And so really make sure that this is someone that you want to be living with in housing next year. The rumor mill is definitely something that you'll come across when it comes to room selection. And so please just don't believe everything that you hear. Yes, it is true that sophomore students do have a good chance of ending up on College Road. However, if you do end up on College Road, you're gonna be okay. Your housing is going to be fine, and you will have a social life and have a wonderful time living in that community. And the last thing that I just want to highlight is have a backup plan. It's important when going into room selection process that you have at least 4 plans, just in the event that plan A doesn't work out, and then you don't get stuck not having something else as a backup. And so make sure that you come up with multiple visions of what you would want for next year in terms of your housing. Really quickly, this slide just talks about the overall room selection process. You'll see steps 1 through 5 listed below. So just take a second to kind of prepare yourself for what we're going to talk about in this presentation. We'll go ahead and start with step 1, which is the information sessions. You're listening to the recorded information session now. However, one thing that I'd like to highlight is that this year, due to the times that we're currently in, we're going to be doing some question and answer sessions this year. And so please make sure to focus on this slide, write down the days and times that these sessions will be happening. You'll see that the bulk of the sessions are happening in February, with one happening in the beginning of March. The sessions are split between virtual sessions and drop-in hours. The virtual sessions will happen mainly at night, and the links to those sessions will be emailed the day before. And the drop-in hours will happen during the day, during normal business hours, and you can come by the 4th floor of Maloney Hall in the Residential Life Office, and we'd be happy to assist you with any questions, comments, or concerns that you may have regarding the room selection process.
Step 2 of the process is the individual housing application. The application will be available starting Monday, January 25th, and will close on Friday, February 5th. All students must indicate their housing intent by Friday, February 5th. Our dates throughout the room selection process are firm. This is how you will access your individual housing application. You'll log into your Agora portal, click on the MyRes Life link, click on the Applications tab, and then select the 2021-2022 academic year application. Throughout the application, you're going to make sure you update your roommate profile, indicate your housing intent again, indicate if you have a medical need, complete a living and learning community application if you're interested. You want to make sure that the include in search box is checked, and you want to sign the residency agreement and COVID addendum. The housing intent is important because this is what allows us to know whether or not how many students are going to be going through the room selection process or not. If you intend to live on campus next year, you want to make sure to put your intent as on campus. Students who do not declare an intent are not guaranteed to live in university housing for the 2021-2022 academic year. Again, this refers to the firm date of Friday, February 5th. If you do not indicate that you will be living on campus by that date, you will not be able to participate in the room selection process. If you have any questions or if your intent changes, please let us know at placement@bc.edu. We always say if you're unsure of what your plans are for next year, put that your intent is on campus and then let us know later. It's easier for us to pull you out of the process than it is to put you into the process. If you have a medical need for any type of housing accommodation, you can let us know in the application as well. If you currently have a medical housing accommodation, you must renew with the Office of Disability Services by Friday, February 5th. Again, we try to keep our dates as aligned as possible. You'll have to go through their registration process and include supporting documentation for your housing accommodation request. And then you will be notified prior to room selection if you have been granted your request.
So next, we're going to be talking about some living and learning communities that are available to upper class students in on-campus housing. For students not familiar with living and learning communities, these are spaces on campus where students can be grouped together that share an interest in a specific topic or theme, which I will talk about in the next couple of slides. For upper class living and learning communities, the three that we'll be talking about is the Healthy Living, MLE 2.0, and Sustainability LLCs. We'll start off with the Healthy Living LLC. So this living learning community is dedicated to defining and promoting individual wellness and is through a sponsorship with the Office of Health Promotion. Requirements for this living learning community is an interest in further developing and maintaining a lifestyle that supports well-being, as well as being dedicated to living in an environment free of alcohol, tobacco, and other substances. The Healthy Living community is located in Vanderslice Hall for sophomore students and Reservoir Apartments for junior and senior students. However, pending the number of applications and the spaces that we have available, it could end up being that some sophomores would end up in Reservoir Apartments and some juniors and seniors could end up living in Vanderslice Hall. Next, we'll talk about the Sustainability LLC. So the Sustainability LLC is dedicated to exploring the topic of sustainability through an interdisciplinary lens and promoting environmental awareness. Requirements for this LLC is that it is open to sophomore students, and while there is no prior experience necessary, there is a requirement for an interest and commitment to living in an intentional community around the issues of sustainability. And students who choose to take part in this living learning community will be required to take a 3-credit course in the spring semester, and these students will be living in Reservoir Apartments. And the last LLC that we'll be talking about today is the Multicultural Learning Experience 2.0, also known as MLE. This is a continuation of the MLE LLC for first-year students. So for first-year students who were a part of this, if you were to go into this living learning community, it's just a continuation of that. So the MLE community is dedicated to exploring the broad topic of multicultural leadership through an interdisciplinary and social justice lens. In terms of requirements, this LLC is open to sophomores. And again, while no prior experience is necessary, we do ask that you have an interest and commitment to living in an intentional community that is around the issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And students will be required to take a 1-credit course within this LLC, and they will be living in 90 St. Thomas More Hall. Next, we'll just talk about LLC application specifics. And so the LLC application is part of the housing application, which again, this application will be available January 25th to February 5th. So interested students will submit an individual LLC application. When you are in the housing application and you get to that part where you show an interest, you'll then have the opportunity to fill out that specific application that you're interested in. Selections are based on the quality of individual applications. And so please be sure that if you're interested in one of these living learning communities, that you really take the time to talk about why you're interested and the impact and benefit that it can have on your overall time at Boston College. Applicants that submitted for a living learning community will be notified of their acceptance by February 19th. And if you are selected and accept placement into an LLC, you do not participate in group process. You will be pre-placed with other students that have also been accepted into the living learning community. And so with saying that, I do want to take a second to talk about roommate preferences. So applicants can preference roommates. However, these roommate preferences must match, must apply to the same program, and must be selected in order for preferences to be accommodated. Meaning that if Jay and I both wanted to live together next year and we had an interest in living in a living learning community, we would have to make sure that we both indicate that we would like to live with one another. We would both have to apply to the same program, meaning that I can't apply for healthy living and Jay can't apply for sustainability. We would both have to apply for the same one. And we must both be selected in order for preferences to be accommodated. Meaning that if you have a roommate preference that you have, make sure that you both are communicating with one another on whether or not you are selected or accepted. And that way we don't have any confusion or issues with not being able to room together in the event that you both were not selected into the living learning community. Moving on to step 3, we really just want to talk about the importance of investigating and planning. Remember back during the beginning of this presentation, I had mentioned that it's important to have multiple backup plans, have at least 4 plans going into this process. And so now we'll be really talking about the investigation piece of the room selection process. And so with this, you really need to think about investigating who you want to live with, where you want to live, and really understanding the ways to go about doing that. For example, look at floor plans that are available on the ResLife website. Speak with potential roommates about preferences. Make sure you're all on the same page. You can talk with your RAs, your RDs. There'll be bulletin boards in your residence halls that will give more information about what's going on for housing next year. Placement at bc.edu will be sending you plenty of emails throughout the room selection process. And so please be sure to read those emails to understand exactly what's going on at any point. You can also check information available on the room selection website, which will include infographics, YouTube videos, and so much more. Learn more about the living and learning communities on our website, in addition to the information that I have just shared. Again, have many plans in mind for room selection. Check out the Facebook Roommate Finder group and have as many plans in mind for room selection. We put this in here multiple times for a reason. It is important for you to have multiple backup plans, for you to have multiple visions of where you want to be next year and who you want to be with. And so just please, please make sure that you have those multiple backup plans in mind.
We will now talk about group selection. Each day of group selection is a different day based off of room type and group size. The calendar is on our website, as well as you will see throughout our office and the bulletin boards that will be posted later. Each group should designate one group leader, and this group leader will collect all Eagle IDs for their group. The group leader is then responsible for selecting housing for their entire group, and the group leader is the only person that will log into their application and be part of the individual day selection. Each student can only be a part of one group, so make sure that when you're investigating and planning, you're happy with the group that you're going forth with. To apply for a specific type of room, the group leader must register their group the morning of that room type, and groups must equal the number of bed spaces of the housing being requested. This means that if you're going for an 8-person suite, you must have 8 people in your group. You can't have 7 and you can't have 9. If the odds are in your favor and you get to select a room, the group leader will get an email saying how to go forth and what your pick time is. And unfortunately, if the odds were not in your favor that day, your group leader will get an email saying you did not get to pick and that you'll have to register for a different room type day. Students with financial holds or conduct holds will not be eligible to go through this process. Don't fear though, we will be sending emails from placement on a weekly and then daily basis to these students to make sure that they're aware of their status. If you receive an email about a financial hold, you'll have to go to student services. And if you receive an email about a conduct hold, you'll have to go to the conduct office. Group selection day. From 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., the group leader will log into their application and create and register their group. Once the group is full, the group leader will verify their group and it cannot be changed. The group leader can register the group anytime between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. It does not matter what time. From 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., groups are assigned pick times through the random lottery process. And from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., the group leader receives an email stating if their group is selected to pick housing that day. If the group is selected, the pick time will be included in that email. From 4 p.m. until all the spaces are selected, each day is a little bit different when the pick times end. Group leaders will log in during their assigned pick time and select housing for their group. Pick times again start at 4 p.m. and 3 groups will go every 5 minutes. So 3 groups at 4 o'clock, 3 groups at 4:05, and so forth. The group leader will assign group members to specific bedrooms, and the space your group leader selects is your room for next year. Be sure your group leader knows who should be direct roommates and who should be in which room. This goes back to making a plan and making sure that you and your group leader know exactly what to do in that time period. The group leader must click save after finalizing the selection, and group members can then view their assignments once it's saved and selected by going into their housing application. Blocking. Blocking is a way that allows several groups to select housing together at the same time and form mini communities. Groups may block with 1, 2, or 3 other groups depending on the selection day. Groups must be the same size, applying for the same type of housing, and fall within the same eligibility category. Blocked groups have one group leader and register once for everyone. Blocking does not improve or hurt chances of selecting housing, and groups that block may be co-ed, but suites and rooms are still single-gendered. Information about blocking can be found in the policy section of the room selection website. And if you have any questions about blocking or how it can help you, please reach out to anyone that works for Residential Life. How groups are assigned lottery numbers and pick times. Groups are weighted based on the class year of the student. Each class has a different eligibility code. Juniors and seniors are given a sum of 1, sophomores a sum of 2, and first years a sum of 3. The sum of the group's eligibility code determines the group's category. The Residential Life website has a complete breakdown of these categories for each selection day. Groups with a lower eligibility category will receive preference over students with a higher eligibility category. So it's kind of like golf. The juniors will always pick over the sophomores, and the sophomores will always pick over the first year students. Groups with the same eligibility category numbers are assigned to random lottery numbers to determine their pick times. Here is the order of the room selection days. The first 4 days are typically for juniors, and the last 4 days are typically for first year students. Some of our tips and tricks throughout this process is to find one person to be your direct roommate and don't leave them. Make sure that when you're looking at room type and group size, that you're registering that meets your need and not editing down. Instead of kicking people out of your group to select for a particular room type, you can use blocking or wait for another day in which your entire group will be able to select together. If you need help finding roommates or chatting through the process, connect with your RD or use the Facebook Finder group.
Or another option available to you within step 4 is final selection. And so final selection, as I'll go into more detail in the next couple of slides, is really the opportunity for students who may see group process as overwhelming or maybe not worth it for them, or just not aligned with what it is that they're looking for housing in regards to next year. And that's totally okay. And so final selection is an option for you if this is what you're kind of feeling when thinking about the room selection process. So again, step 4, final selection. Final selection is for students who do not have a group or do not wish to participate in the group process and can therefore sign up for final selection. Final selection sign up begins Friday, March 26th and ends Monday, March 29th. Students who sign up for final selection may indicate up to 3 room type preferences. And assignments will be based on availability of preferences as well as roommate profile matching. And so again, it's really important to make sure that that roommate profile is up to date. And lastly, students who choose to take part in final selection will be assigned to housing in June. So here we are, step 5, after room selection. Now, if you end up wishing to move off campus after selecting your room, you must do so by completing a housing cancellation form. For those wanting to complete this housing cancellation form, you have until May 31st to cancel housing and receive a full refund. For those who take part in final selection, please do not let this deadline scare you away. For final selection students, you will have up to 72 hours after you receive your housing assignment email to decide whether or not you would like to cancel your housing and still receive that full refund. So if you really are interested in final selection, do not worry about the May 31st date because since you'll receive your housing in June, you'll have 72 hours to make that decision once your email has been sent to you regarding your housing assignment. Students must move into the room selected at room selection or assigned through final selection. This is really important to remember that if after the room selection process or after final selection, you realize that one of your other friends has an opening and you'd rather live with them, you cannot just move into that room. If you have any questions about room assignments or roommates or anything like that, please email placement@bc.edu. But just remember that regardless, you do need to move into the room that you are assigned to, whether that be through room selection or final selection. Students are not permitted to change rooms until after the second week of classes. This is because we do have that 2-week room freeze in the beginning of the semester, just so that way we have an idea of who's coming to campus and who's not, and can have a more accurate representation of what vacancies are available. And lastly, students choosing to change rooms without approval may be referred through the student conduct process. And so again, as I mentioned earlier, it's very important that if you have any questions or concerns about vacancies or wanting to live with other people, that's totally fine. You can ask those questions through placement@bc.edu, but you cannot just make those decisions yourselves when coming to campus. And so just understanding that the repercussions there is that you could go through the student conduct process. Class standing, class year is determined by the student's date of entry, expected graduation, and credits completed. Locations are not class specific. However, most locations become class-based through the selection process, so just something to keep in mind. And cross-class groups are allowed, but will impact eligibility category. Now that we've gone ahead and brought you through the before, during, and after of room selection process, we just want to go ahead and give you a little bit of insight based on past room selections on where students have ended up living. And so for those that are going to be sophomores next year, please take a moment to go ahead and see where sophomore students have ended up living. For those that will be juniors next year, here is the places where students have typically ended up residing. And finally, for those that will be seniors next year, please see below for where seniors have typically ended up living.
When going through the process, we do expect all students to conduct themselves with the integrity and respect deemed important as a Boston College student. If you're caught tampering or manipulating the process in any way, you can risk immediate removal from housing and go through the conduct system. And students are asked to be civil and courteous to each other to make the room selection process as less stressful as possible. Some thoughts about COVID-19. As of now, we hope to lessen the restrictions related to living in university housing. However, final decisions will be made by the university over the summer of 2021. Students will be notified any pertinent information via their BC email. And we are hopeful that things will go back to a more sense of normal than they were this past academic year of 2021. So some things to remember throughout this process. 8-person suites are popular, but they may not be the type of environment you're looking for. 20 to 25% of the sophomore class will live on College Road, and your social life will exist. The only factor impacting selection, aside from a random lottery, is your class year. The process is designed to be as fair as possible and allow for equal participation for all students. Room selection can be stressful, but we're here to help. Thank you for attending this virtual information session. If you have any questions, please contact us, as well as you can attend those question and answer sessions Caitlin talked about earlier. Thank you.